Today, I have a special guest in my show. It is the healer, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book, The Secret Language of Your Body, Inna Segal. Inna experienced years of intense back pain and a difficult skin disorder affecting her physical body, coupled with anxiety in her emotional body. Through grace and a deep journey of self-inquiry, she was able to connect and heal the relationship with her physical pain and her emotions. In the process, she discovered she could actually see the disease and energetic blocks in her body and understand how to heal herself and others. Now, Inna shares her deep knowledge of how the body communicates in her book and her online programs. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be able to speak to Inna about the cause of pain, about how our energetic body is connected to our physical body, about disease in general, but also especially about diseases of children, about how these manifest in our children's bodies and how we as parents might support the healing process of our children. Inna, welcome to my podcast show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Inna, I am personally a huge fan of your book, The Secret Language of Your Body. I read it in German, though, and it really helped me to get rid of several, pains and issues I had for many, many years. And I went from doctor to doctor, and literally nobody could help me, telling me where it came from and what I could do about it. And somebody handed over your book to me a few years ago, and I just sat down and I tried out your techniques, and I was absolutely mind blown that 2 of the issues disappeared within a day and never came back until today. So I dived deeper into your work, and I've done several webinars with you. And one I did just recently, a few days ago. And there was also a short practice you did with us. And again, that was so profound for me. I discovered a few blocks I had in my energy system. And so I talk about your work actually very often through my social media channels, in my podcasts, and so on. But maybe for those who don't know you yet, maybe you can tell us a little bit about you and your journey and your work.
Thank you. It's beautiful to hear how people can use the work to really transform themselves, especially just from the book. For me, it was, as you had mentioned, I had back pain, digestive issues, I had psoriasis and anxiety. And by, really, I was going round and round in circles, sounds kind of like you were. And I just had, I believe that we have moments of epiphany, where we have to make a change or we have to do something different. And essentially for me, that was when I ended up on the doorstep of a chiropractor who had been seeing me and trying to help me for a while. And he essentially saw where I was at, and he just said, your body's stuck and there's nothing I can do for you, go home. And so my experience was really okay, so how can my body be stuck? But in my mind, I want to get well. Nobody actually sits there and goes, I want to be sick. So to me, it was very curious at that time. I was very young as well, that my body wanted to be stuck for what reason, And so when I went home, I literally decided that I was going to get better. I was going to heal myself, and I was going to learn this language of the body. I didn't really know how to. So I got home and I just went, I'm just going to tune in to my body. And the way, again, I didn't know how to do that at the time. So I just started breathing with the pain, counting backwards and asking questions. And at one point I felt this warmth go through my body. And I thought to myself, something's happening. And then I realized that I don't even know where that came from, that I needed to go deeper and explore more. And so I just kind of said, I wonder what my body looks like, without really expecting anything at that point. And I was shown my back, literally as if I had X-ray vision. And at that point, there was a little bit of fear, I have to say, because I was like, what is it? That doesn't look good. And so I started really asking the right questions. And this is what I talk about. Often people go into victimhood of asking the wrong questions, hating their body, resisting their body, as opposed to befriending. And when I talk about befriending your body, it's actually trying to understand, what are you saying to me? You know, what is this about? How do I get better? Where am I moving forward? So most people, including myself, spend years in the victim state. And so I did. And then in that moment when I was asking, I wasn't really asking from a victim place. I was really asking from wanting to understand. And so I realized I'm a very visual person, so everyone gets information differently. Some people feel it, some people hear it. I see it. And so for me, I was shown an image of literally moving countries and going from where I was born to Australia to, and not really feeling like I can fit into this culture in Australia. And I was still very young, but I was only 11, but I didn't know the language. I didn't know how to connect with people here. And that was something that caused a lot of feeling of weakness and lack of support and lack of strength, which affected my back. And then when I recognized it, and this is how the body works, it actually works through recognition. It's like a little child would work through recognition, right? So the body is the same in that sense, the body, soul, spirit experience. And when I saw that, it was like, oh, okay, I'm understanding now. There's a kind of relief. And then I went in, and then the image changed, and I was shown that, again, the support didn't just, or the lack of support didn't just happen at school and I got bullied. It also happened at home. And even though I didn't have bullying at home, there was a lot of stress at home. And as a child, I was absorbing my parents' stress. I was absorbing their conflict. And again, they couldn't speak the language. They didn't know the culture. So they were very uncomfortable. They didn't fit in. And all of that was going into me. And they were arguing. So I didn't feel safe at home in terms of just them being calm. But I also didn't feel like, I felt like I was absorbing a lot of their stuff, which is what children do, and how they get sick, essentially. And the other thing that was really interesting for me was my grandparents have been through the war. And of course, if you live in Europe or born around then, most of us have grandparents who've been through the war. And they were so traumatized. My grandmother literally was part of a family of 8. I always say 7, but my mom was like 8. Her mother had 8 children, and she essentially was the only one who survived out of her family, her and her father. And there was so much trauma around that experience of war and what she saw and what she went through, that, and then she didn't talk about it for 50 years. And so all of that I felt had come through ancestrally to me. I absorbed that. And so did my cousins. And so I had irrational fear of that was very strong of I'm just going to end up on the street. I'm not going to have a home. I'm not going to have anywhere to live. So things like that. And so I realized through all of those insights from my own inner being that I needed to do some work. I needed to feel things, let go of stuff, move, transform things. And and through that heal. And by connecting and listening and receiving that information, my body healed. It was pretty amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds great. And it's very interesting how you already mentioned that, you as a child absorbed the stress of your parents, or even that you had maybe, any energetic blocks or whatever inside of your body from your grandparents even. And this is such an interesting topic for me, because I also believe that we are so energetically connected to our children, especially. I mean, we all are connected, but I think the connection between the parents and the children is so intense. I feel it with my own daughter every day, how she can hear my thoughts in some levels, how she picks up my emotions. And even though if I don't show it to her, my inner stress, so she kind of still feels it. And that is like, how would you say, is that really the cause of like illnesses for children? How are we connected, and how is it like, even if we try to hide the stress in front of our children, could that cause like illnesses? Is it all coming from an energetic level as well, or is there something that, how, for example, I run my own kindergarten here in Bali, and we all know that somebody has a flu and it's contagious, and then on the next day everybody has it. But is it still something that comes from the outer world, or is it all like starting from the inside? What would you say about that?
It's such a big question, because it depends on what people want to look at and believe, because there's two sides to it. One, we can go to the womb and start to look at what was happening with the mother in the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and in terms of how the baby was growing, how the head was developing, how the rest of the body was developing. And if the mother was under massive stress, anxiety, tension, fear, then the baby, without any doubt, is going to have weaknesses. Then we have the ancestral aspect. So we can look at, well, what have the people in the family, not just necessarily the mother. I found that I was much more affected by my grandparents than I was by my mom. So her parents had more of an impact on my physical body, and even the issues that came up. Like my grandfather had psoriasis. My dad did as well from his dad, but it was, the digestive issues, again, my grandparents. So I felt like there was a very deep link and a connection. Ancestrally, when I was, when I've looked at what are the things that we bring, and hold and work and need to work with and repeat, not just in childhood, but later in life. And so I kind of feel like there's that ancestral aspect. And then there's, again, depends on our belief systems, but if we believe that we are a soul and a spirit and we have more than one life, then there is a huge aspect related to our health and our capacity to heal that is connected to what is my destiny, what is my karma with illnesses or health. And one of the things that I've learned a lot about is that if you prevent childhood illnesses, then very likely you are, through medical treatment, let's call it, then there is a high likelihood that childhood illness that a person was meant to go through to clear some of their karma from the past will end up showing up as a major explosion of a physical problem or an emotional problem or something happening in their life later in their life, but it will be amplified because you didn't deal with, you kind of, a lot of the childhood type of illnesses are actually connected to clearing what happened in previous lifetimes and strengthening your physical body, you know, and overcoming things. So preventing those is, you know, causes a reaction. And I wish people knew that and thought about that before they, you know, kind of before they chose what treatment they're going to give a child. And again, I'm not saying don't treat your child or don't have things. I'm just saying certain medical treatments prevent your own capacity to heal, as opposed to natural treatments where it works with your physical body and the subtle bodies. Another thing we need to understand is that in the first 7 years of life, the child is in the etheric body of their mother, which is the life body of the mother. And that's the body that's connected to health. And so if there is damage in that particular body from the mother, and if she's really struggling with how she's being treated or what she's experiencing in the first 7 years of life, that will have a huge impact on the child, you know, and even the birth trauma, you know. So when I look at how somebody was born, it tells me about what's going to happen in their life, how they're going to respond to life, you know, what they're going to, you know, to experience. So if somebody had been pulled out by forceps, you know, then they're always looking for somebody to pull them out of situations, you know, they don't know how to do it themselves because that was their first experience often. If they've been hit, you know, by a doctor when they first came out, then they're going to potentially be open to violence or have an experience of, you know, there's a comfort with it, or there is an attraction to abuse or violence in some way or form, or punishment. So it may not be even physical, but there is a sense of pain, you know, or it could just be pain in the body that they live with. If somebody is, you know, when they have a cesarean also, so often, not always, but often there's a problem with breathing. So can lead to asthma, and also that sense of I've been rescued, I don't know how to do things myself. If somebody comes out, you know, very quickly, then they're always trying to do things too quickly. You know, they're kind of going, oh, you know, often before they've thought about it, they're already, you know, onto doing. And so when we start looking at all these different aspects, we understand a lot about, you know, children, our childhood, our life. And the other thing I just want to say briefly, every child has a particular temperament. And one of the biggest issues in them not being healthy is that rather than working with their temperament, people, you know, whether it's a parent or a school teacher, work against the temperament. And that actually creates an implosion inside of the child. And if I can give a quick example, like, for example, my daughter's temperament is the opposite of my son's temperament. So she's very steady, stable, happy, you know, she loves having fun, socializing, but she's quite a socializing, joyful person who loves expressing herself, creativity, acting, all sorts of things, dancing. And when she was young, I found that the way to work with her was with constant reassurance, constant love, constant. So, for example, she would say to me, "Mom, I'm not like you. I don't want to talk about my emotions. I don't want to talk about things." But I would say, "Okay, would you dance and show me how you feel?" and she would, and I'll witness it and I'll really be present, and she would, but only if I was fully present. And she would go, Mom, you weren't here, you didn't see it, or, or what did you see? Or, and so that really created an incredible connection over time with us, because, and she would say, this is how I'm different, and so on. Whereas, and my temperament and her temperament are very different. And then my son would not respond to that at all. In fact, he hated that type of approach. And so he was very melancholic and very sensitive, creative, but not very emotional. And so with him, if he would get really challenged or get down on himself or have an issue, the way that you'd work with him is to share a story about somebody who's struggled and how they, did really well, and, and how they overcame it, and, give him some strategy. But it wasn't through just telling him how lovable he was, that just didn't really, land with him. So it was quite different to figure it out and to help them become stronger and healthier, and to see where in their body, in their organs and their chakras, there was a real strength and a weakness. And then as they got older, we talk about it, and, and I'd acknowledge it and go, look, you're really, really strong in this area, and it's amazing. So my son he has no fear in terms of traveling, for example. So he wants adventure all the time. Whereas, I was like, well, I've traveled, but I wouldn't do it on my own without knowing where I was going and what I was doing. But he just, do it, connect with people, really doesn't matter where they were, who they were, he would make friends everywhere. Whereas my daughter was really shy, and she was like, oh, I need to spend time with him because I need to get my confidence up in this area to be able to talk to anyone. So it was really interesting even to see how they would work with, with helping each other. So yeah, it's just fascinating with children.
Wow, that's so beautiful. What a valuable information all of that is. That is great, because I experienced that myself, that in our times nowadays, right, we get like symptoms, or our kids get symptoms. And I know it as a mother, and you probably do, that as when we get symptoms, that's one thing. But if there is a small child and we see them suffering, we get really scared. We want to do everything right. And, we bring them as fast as possible to a doctor. And, we get like, we are always looking for that help from the medical system to kind of get rid of the symptoms, get rid of the pain. And I think this is such a beautiful way of seeing things from a different perspective, right? Than just like numbing the symptoms and numbing the pain. And we actually do that a lot with our children in the kindergarten, and with my own daughter, I do that a lot. When she gets a symptom, I always tell her, your body's talking to you. It wants to tell you something. So she says, like, my tummy's aching. Then I tell her, well, ask your tummy why it's aching, and try to listen to it. And it's not that she comes up with an answer all the time, but I think that it helps her to realize that her body's connected to herself, and she can go inwards to see what her body's telling her. And just as you explain it, it sounds like our body is like a storage for all kind of information, right? So there's like everything that happens it's kind of stored in our body, or everything that happened to our ancestors even is stored in our body. And then it tries to tell us what we can let go. Because is that the aim, is like letting go of all that? And how, like, what can we do as parents if we see our children? I mean, I could do your programs, and I can, do this work, and I can go tune into myself to kind of, release it and understand it and maybe let go a bit. But what can we do as parents to support our children?
So there's a lot that you can do. So depends on the age of the child. So we really have to look at what is the age that we're talking about. So one of the, children have absolutely incredible creativity, and trust and belief. And so the idea with children is essentially to encourage that creativity. And so I found, for example, and I can give examples here, in different scenarios, in different situations when I've worked with children. So, for example, if when I first started, this is so many years ago, I was in my early 20s at that time, and I ended up, I just had my daughter, and I actually ended up meeting this lady at one of those baby shows, and she asked me, what do you do? And I said, I do healing work. And she just went, oh, I'm not interested. And I was like, okay, it's all right. And but I gave her a card anyway. I just said, look, if you ever want to catch up. So I remember she ended up calling me not long after, a few months later, I think it was, really panicking. And she said to me, oh, I'm calling you literally as a last resort. My son's in the hospital. He has pneumonia. He had a hole in his heart, and that he was born with. And she said to me, we're basically at a point of saying goodbye to him. And he was about 6, I think, at the time. And I said to her, whoa, hold on a second. Don't say goodbye. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write a process for you that you can do with your husband. And I would like you to do it 3 times a day. And it was focusing on him and talking to your soul and clearing things out. And I said, and I'll do some clearing from what I see. And I said to her, call me back in a few hours and see what happens. And so she called me back, and he was in a coma. So she called me back and she said, oh my God, it's an absolute miracle. He is so much better. He's out of a coma. He's actually eating. It's amazing. He's just like, he's so much better. And then she came to me and I worked with him, and I would just kind of get him to visualize different colors, and I'd talk to him about characters, and I would do the healing energetically also on him. But after a few months, he said to me, hey, I know how to do healing now. I'm going to do someone new. And what was incredible was that he would go to his kindergarten or whenever, I think he was still going to preschool, and he would always get sick, always. Like if somebody was sick, as you were saying, he would be sick immediately. And his mom called me and she said, I can't believe this. Everybody is so sick at the preschool or whatever it was, kindergarten, and he's not like, and over probably 6 months, he became the healthiest kid, in that environment. And it was amazing to watch, because there was no resistance. It was so easy to work with him. And I mean, we can also go back to, I'm thinking now of different examples. Even last year, I had a grandmother call me, and she had done quite a few workshops with me previously. And she said to me, oh my God, Inna, I don't know what to do. My daughter's just had a baby, and the doctors are saying that the baby is not going to live. And I said, all right, hold on a sec. Just let me look and tune into the baby and the soul and see what's going on. And I could see the soul was, freaked out by everything that was going on, and was kind of moving away, and I know how to communicate with the soul, and I was like, okay, what do you need to come back? Would it be possible for you to come back? Is that for your journey? Are you just really anxious and afraid? And there was something that was done medically that wasn't right. And she said, yeah, I'm just so scared. There was so much fear. And I said to her grandmother, all right, okay, I know what to do. So you need to work with these particular colors, get her parents to communicate with her and tell her that it's safe, tell her that she's going to be looked after, send her love. And then there were some processes that are more advanced where I was like, work with soul fragments, bringing back. And I think by the next day, the baby was fine. The baby was stable. And last I heard, she's doing really, really well, even though the medical profession was saying that she's not going to survive, and so through her grandmother doing a few processes, by me seeing and understanding what to do, she's alive and, doing really, really well. So, it's so interesting and in so many different ways. There was another experience I had when I was traveling a lot, and I remember I was teaching in Mexico, and there was a boy, pretty sure he was 8, and I was doing a talk, and then at the end of the talk he ran up to me and he said, I want to do your workshop. And it was a 6-day workshop at the time, and I said, it's not really for children. And he said, well, I know where you live, because my parents are friends with the people where you're staying, and I will come every single day to the house until you let me do this workshop. And I was like, God, I want adults like this. I don't get people like you. Yeah. And he said, my mom actually brought me to this talk as a punishment. And he said, I turned to her and I said, Mom, if you want to punish me like this, I want to be punished every day. And in the end, I let him do the course. It was really interesting because his parents later on told me that he had been a real bully at school and nobody liked him, and he was in conflict with a lot of children. He didn't have a lot of self-confidence. After he did the course, his mom said to me, I don't know what you've done to him, but he's like an angel. Everyone loves him at school. He's changed completely, so and his capacity to tune into people. He was saying to me, I think the following year, because he was coming to do some advanced stuff, and he's like, and helping me. He was one of my helpers. And he was tuning into people and literally telling them exactly what was, going on in their bodies. So it's amazing. I'm going to give you one more example of children. I think when I was 25, I did in an interview on TV in Australia on one of the big TV stations, and a mother called me and she said, look, my son has arthritis, juvenile arthritis. He literally cannot walk without crutches. His knee has blown up, and he wants to be a professional golfer. And she said, we've had surgery, we've gone to physio, we've changed the diet, nothing, been to naturopath, nothing really works. And he's in pain all the time, and he's 12. And I said to her, all right, cool, let me talk to him. And they were so this was actually distance. They were living in a different state to me in Australia. And so I started to, again, tuning in and talking to, his name was Sebastian on the phone. And I said to him, okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to release pain, because pain is going to stop you from exploring more. And so we did. And within a very, very short period of time, his pain disappeared. And then I said, okay, now we're going to work on the inflammation to understand what's going on, because one leg is double the size, of the other, and we really need to see what's happening. And what was fascinating with Sebastian was that, and he would do everything that I said to do, and we'd see this incredible progress even with the inflammation. I'm like, you've got to work with green, and then you've got to rub this area, and then you've got to work with whatever it was, red, and then you've got and so we had this whole routine, and his mother would help him, but there was still a part of his inflammation that I just couldn't get rid of with him or with processes. And I said to his mom, would you consider coming to a workshop? And and now I do it a lot online. Then I was doing it only live. And she came to another city where I was doing it. It was amazing. At one point, we were actually doing a past life process. And I'm not the biggest fan of just throwing people into it. I'm very, very careful with, that type of thing. But I was like, I've looked at the family, I've looked at ancestry. I just cannot find anything that would cause this, for it to completely release. And it was amazing. So he saw a past life where a shark had bitten his leg off, and his mom was his sister in that life. And he was so quiet, such a sweet, quiet boy. He started screaming, when that experience happened, when he was seeing that vision. And I was like, wow, something's really happening. And I think it was within days that the inflammation completely released. And I was like, oh, wow, you got to try everything. But it was, him connecting to his own depth and wisdom, and, having that incredible transformation. And he ended up becoming a professional golfer. I think he's like 28 now. So
wow.
It was a while ago. That
is miraculous.
Yeah. And what was really interesting was that I'm actually good friends with his mom now. Lisa was saying to me that he was, when they went to physio, it was like literally the body, that his leg was stuck. There was a twist in it that released through doing this type of work.
Wow.
And the physio couldn't do it. So, I've seen a lot of amazing experiences with children, and I've talked more about physical issues, but I've seen, connecting with children, talking to them about sleep, confidence. There's been so many, so many around experiences. The more I talk about it, the more I'm remembering different ones.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing. So I would say that even for parents, it is really, really worth it to do your online programs, right? Even if it's not for their own disease or pain or whatever, although I believe we kind of all have kind of something carrying within us, right? Even if we don't suffer from a lot of pain or a lot of symptoms, I think there is something to do for all of us. But even for parents who might have children who suffer from a disease or, get sick all the time or whatever, it's also helping them to do your programs. Is that correct?
Oh, it is so helpful, and I remember being in Mexico, and this is just an example of it, and with my children and my son, and they were playing, and my son basically had my daughter upside down at that time, and I don't know if she was 8 or something, and he dropped her on her nose, and she was screaming, like literally going crazy. And so we had to go and see a doctor, and while we're in the car, I was literally connecting to her nose and fixing the brake, because it was broken. And by the time we got to, and clearing the pain out, by the time we got to the doctor, and he was like, oh, it's got to be broken, and he was like, all right, let me do an x-ray. And he did an x-ray, and he was like, I don't know what happened here. It doesn't seem broken. And he was just in shock, and I mean, having those capacities, makes so much difference. And, and it's similar to, there was a mother again who brought her, I think it was 13-year-old son to me, and he got into a fight at school and somebody punched him in the eye. And essentially, so she went and had an x-ray at the hospital, and they said that they'd have to do surgery immediately, or well, actually within 2 days, I think, of it, and that they'd have to put a metal plate inside his eye. And I was like, oh, no. I said to her, I come today, let me see. And so again, I work with and I teach about it with etheric hands. And so we kind of activate this hands and get into the body and into the whichever part of the body that needs help in this particular scenarios. And so I was getting with my etheric hands into his eye and clearing everything and putting the eye back together. And I said to his mom, it's almost like I've done everything I can, but there's something that needs to be pushed together and I just can't do it. But everything else to me seems fine. I don't think he needs surgery. And he was saying his pain had disappeared. Even his eye was blood red. That disappeared within hours. And the next day when he went into surgery, the surgeon came out after half an hour and he said, I don't know what happened, but we didn't have to do anything except just push this, the eye back in some way. And he's like, it's fine. And she just called me and she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. So, there's so much we can do.
Wow. But do we all have the capacity to learn that and to do that and to heal ourselves and heal others? Or are there some people who are maybe, I don't know, born with something, or, have more talents, or are kind of more intuitive than others? Or is it can we all learn that?
Look, there are people where it's more natural for them. So it's just easy, And there are people where it is much more of a challenge for them because they have built up a lot of resistance and they build up a lot of tension, and maybe they've taken medication, which does have an impact on your capacity to sensitize yourself. So I haven't had an experience of somebody not being able to learn how to heal. I've had an experience where somebody learns a lot faster than someone else. So that's what I'm going to say. Now, there are certain things that I'm not sure, that we can heal. If it's a karmic thing and they're meant to have it, you can still try, but you may not be able to. At times when, again, we need to understand subtle body. So if the etheric body has been really torn, could be very difficult, or somebody's getting to an older age. But again, you don't know. You don't know until you try. Again, I had an experience in Mexico where I was doing a 2-day workshop, and there were some people that came to the workshop and they said to me, oh my God, would you mind helping my father-in-law? And he's in a coma. And I was like, look, honestly, I have 10 minutes in the break, so I can do a little bit, and then I can give you some ideas of the things that you can do, and it was just basic color type healing, energy, and let's see what happens. And he was 80 or in his 80s. And we did, so I did my 10 minutes. They did their thing. He came out of the coma. And the last I heard, and it's been years since then, many, many years, he was better than, before he, for years before, after that process. You just don't know who, how it's going to work for whom. I'm not saying it's a miracle for everyone and it's instant.
Yeah.
There are, through my story, some of them took a while, some of them were instant or very quick because they were required to be quick. And I feel like there's an intelligence within a being. But I feel like if somebody really, really wants to learn, they will, if they have a motivation to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, once you get on that journey, I think you have the right belief system for it as well, right? Because once you start doing that things, then you give it a chance, you open that door, that window where you think, okay, this is even possible. And once you, have this belief, I think then everything is, up to you and possible in certain ways for sure. Yeah. And okay, so I have just one last question where I know that all parents are, this is a topic that comes to me in my work with parents a lot. And it's like about, what should we allow our children or not? Because I know, in my belief, we should really go away from this control and give our children the chance, to expand and to be themselves, no matter how they are and what they are. But still, we have this, this thought that we are responsible for our children, and a lot of our choices and our fears have to do with their health. For example, how much sugar should I allow eating them? How about vitamins? How about a healthy lifestyle? Should I, allow them to be surrounded in, in an environment where I believe that it's unhealthy or whatever? So how is the impact of these things that come to us or to our children from the outside? Like, for example, eating sugar or eating, healthy or unhealthy stuff. Or could I just say, I let go of all of that and I let my child decide, and because everything comes from inside anyway? And, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, my thoughts, and I have had a lot of thoughts on this because of different family members and my own children.
Yeah.
So my thoughts on it: if you are too controlling, you're going to create the opposite. But you still have to have, to me, it's more, constant education for your children. So, for example, my daughter is 18 at the moment, and she almost 19, and she moved out, and last year, and she said to me, "Mum, the biggest thing that I appreciate is that I learned about healthy eating from you." And she said, and healthy thinking, and how to understand yourself. And she said, and at times her and I would be in conflict because she wanted way more sugar than I would allow, and I'd be like, no, no, we're not buying that. And then when she got older, when I realized, okay, it's time to make your own decisions around that, I would still encourage her to eat healthy, for example, and my son as well. But I would still, I'd go, hey, do you want a treat? So that she didn't feel like it was, that it wasn't allowed. And so now I go, and spend time with her, and I'll be like, do you want a treat? Do you want me to buy you something? And often she'll be like, nah, I exercise, I want to be healthy, I don't want to, have that. Or she'll pick the healthiest thing. And she said that the people that she lives with, she's educating them about health and well-being and how to eat, and they're all like, oh wow, it's amazing how much you know. And so for me, that was such amazing feedback from her over the last year, because sometimes it was challenging to say no, and the same as with the phone, I'd be like, no, you need to read, you need to write, you need to be creative, you need to dance, get off the phone. Like, or at different ages, depends on their age, it'd be like, this is the time you're allowed to be on it, and then you're giving it back, and so I found that and educating on why. So I wouldn't just take it away. I would talk to her about why, that was the case. And again, what I found with certain family members that I have, they were going really far with like no TV, no sweets, nothing, and I was talking to them and I would say, look, I get it, especially in earlier years, and I agree. Like I had no sugar in my house at all, and I'm like, once they get a taste of it, they want it. and it's been really interesting because I've seen also the parents turn around and the child doesn't want as much sugar because the parent is more relaxed. And I've seen it even with my partner's children, where one of his daughters is, when, we first kind of met, she was sugar crazy and she'd just be like, I want more. I don't want, and wherever we'd go, she'd be like, I want something sweet. I want this. And so then I started talking to her about it and I'm like, well, can I buy you a healthy version of it? And she'd go, oh, that actually tastes good, And I'm like, yeah, it does, doesn't it? And now, again, she's 12 and I find that she'll be like, oh, thank you, and I'll say, do you want some sweets? And she'll be like, no, I'm good, which was, not like that a year ago, So I feel like with children, you've got to have patience, and it's a balanced approach. It really is a balance, not one way or the other. If you let them just do whatever they want, they won't feel safe, and there will be chaos, And so, in again that feedback of having to go through all of this time with both of my children, my son's 21, I've seen things which didn't work, and I was like, oh God, don't do that. And approach that does work. And sometimes when you're in it, especially when they're teenagers, you just want to cry or shout or or run away. And this is where that inner work is so vital on yourself, because they will test you in every way possible. And so to actually be able to respond instead of reacting, is really empowering. Really empowering.
Thank you. So I think that like a lot, comes, or maybe the root, the cause of all these illnesses and our health in general comes from the inside, but also, our outer world, our lifestyle, what we consume in any way does have an impact on our health as well, obviously, right?
Absolutely. So, I always say to people, the way that I see it is that your life experience is reflected inside your body, and so if I was to tune in or look at somebody's body and what's going on, I can tell them what life experience they've had, what they've processed and transformed, what they haven't, why they have what they have. Often, you can get a sense for how long they've had it. And so you really start to go, there's it's everything. It really is everything. It's, your emotions, it's things that have happened in the past. It could be ancestral. It could be connected to an experience in this life. It could be a physical thing that somebody hurt you. It could be the environment that you live in that's not healthy, where you're always tense, stressed, in conflict. It could be absorption of energy from others. How you respond could be connected to which part of your body is weakened based on one, yourself, what happened in the womb, and also the people in your family that didn't deal with anything. So I always say to people, look, if you really want to be helpful to your family, if you want to make a difference, then do the ancestral trauma clearing so that your children don't have to carry it. That is the best gift you can give work with your own unprocessed shadow, so they don't have to act it out. And yeah, the more I remember, even there was a few months where I was really challenged with my daughter last year, actually, and I was like, oh my God, I actually don't know what to do in this scenario. And I was learning from this lady actually about how to deal with teenagers, and empower them at that point, because I'm like, I'll learn, if I need to. And one of the things she said that just was like, oh my God, this is so powerful. And she said, look, whatever they're saying to you at the time, if you actually stop and go, let me go back to the same age, and what I was doing, and look at whatever was happening to you and your own parents and family and how you were reacting. She said, you could do some pretty amazing work. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a go, on this. And it was very powerful, because it was like, okay, I know you're doing this, and you're upset, or you're having an emotional day, and I'm just going to respond to this. And if and if I'm charged, I'm going to go away and reflect on what this is about. So there's so many things, so much you can do to help each other. So much.
That's great. Yeah. And I think, like, whenever we heal ourselves, we help our children to heal as well, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Amazing.
Definitely.
Wow, that was so powerful. Inna, thank you so much. I will put in my show notes all the links to your website, to your book, to your online programs. And I absolutely highly recommend it to everyone. Because I think that path is so empowering and so healing for all of us. And even within this 1 hour, it was so much of insights that are so important to me and so powerful for all of us. So thank you so much for your time and for being here today.